under the glittering chandeliers of a five-star Dubai hotel, a deal worth $500 million was moments from sealing history. Investors whispered, cameras waited, and one signature promised to change lives. But far from the spotlight, a maid's teenage daughter noticed something no one else dared to see, a silent pattern of prejudice hidden in the contracts and the room itself. What she uncovered wasn't just a legal trap, it was a calculated plan that thrived on racism, meant to keep entire families powerless. Before the ink could dry, her discovery threatened to unravel everything. Would her voice be enough to stop a fortune built on quiet discrimination, or would the world ignore her until it was too late? Layla had spent most of her 16 years in quiet corners, moving through the polished corridors of luxury hotels where her mother cleaned rooms for the powerful and the wealthy. To guests, she was invisible, a shadow slipping past marble floors and crystal vases. But Layla loved to watch the rhythm of deals being made, the clipped conversations, the tense handshakes, the way money seemed to bend reality for those who held it. Her mother, Amina, worked double shifts so Layla could stay in school, dreaming that education would lift them beyond the limits set by their immigration status and their accent. They had built a fragile peace in Dubai's glittering heart, where fortunes rose overnight, and people like them were expected to remain unseen. On the morning of the historic signing, Layla wandered the private conference level while waiting for her mother to finish an early cleaning round. The air was charged, executives in tailored suits moved with urgency, translators murmured in multiple languages, and security guards kept watch. Yet beneath the polished surface, something felt wrong. She caught stray words in Arabic she barely understood, saw subtle gestures exchanged like coded signals, and sensed a tension thicker than the desert heat outside. A pattern was forming, one that prickled her instincts even if she couldn't name it. Layla didn't know it yet, but the quiet observations she carried in her mind would soon collide with a scheme worth hundreds of millions, a scheme built on the same silent prejudices her family had battled for years. And when the moment came, the world would no longer be able to ignore the girl everyone thought was invisible. Layla stayed close to the edge of the conference floor, pretending to check her phone while the grand ballroom swelled with high-stakes energy. White gold lights spilled from the chandeliers onto polished mahogany tables where men in crisp suits exchanged tight smiles. Her mother had warned her to keep a low profile, but something about the murmured Arabic phrases she'd overheard tugged at her nerves. From behind a column, she noticed a pattern in the seating chart displayed on a digital screen. Every delegate from the smaller partner company, those with darker skin and migrant roots like her own, had been shifted to a separate row at the back, far from the cameras. The official explanation was security protocol, yet she saw the sidelong glances, the forced nods. It wasn't just seating. It was a quiet segregation disguised as procedure. A sharp click of heels drew her attention. Two executives whispered in a dialect she only partly understood, but one word cut through clearly: family. Another followed like a slap: cleaner. They were talking about her mother. Layla felt her throat tighten. Why was her mother's name part of this billion-dirham conversation? The contract folders on the central table caught her eye next. Embossed with gold lettering, they gleamed like treasure. A page slid halfway out of one folder when a breeze from the air conditioning nudged it. For a heartbeat she read a single line, its meaning chilling, a clause about temporary workforce displacement linked to migrant labor, people like her mother, framed as a cost-saving measure after the merger. It wasn't just business. It was an erasure hidden in elegant legal language. She backed away, heart hammering. A guard scanned the room, eyes sharp as glass. Layla ducked into a service hallway, pressing her palms against the cool wall. Every instinct screamed to tell her mother, but how? A teenager's warning against a $500 million deal would sound like noise. As she paced, she overheard two translators outside the door, their voices low but urgent. They spoke of the Arabic trap, a tactic where crucial details were finalized in a dialect not fully understood by the foreign investors, ensuring the more powerful party could rewrite terms after signatures were inked. Her stomach turned. This was fraud wrapped in culture and class, and anyone with skin like hers would pay the highest price. She hurried to find her mother, but Amina was already inside, polishing the marble floor near the delegates. Layla signaled frantically, but a guard stepped into her path. His gaze lingered too long on her brown face, his smirk carrying a silent message: "You don't belong here." Adrenaline surged. The doors to the main ballroom began to close, muffling the sound of cameras warming up for the announcement. In seconds, the contract would be signed and the trap sealed. Layla's pulse pounded louder than the applause starting to rise. Should she risk everything, security, her mother's job, even their legal status, to shout the truth? Or stay silent and watch an empire profit from quiet racism? The weight of the decision pressed on her like the desert heat, and she knew she had only moments left before the world's attention turned away forever. The ballroom doors sealed with a heavy thud, and the room hushed as a single spotlight lit the grand table. Cameras flashed like tiny lightning strikes, capturing history in the making. Layla's heart hammered against her ribs. She could see her mother on the far side of the room, kneeling to wipe an invisible streak from the marble floor, unseen like always. The lead negotiator raised his pen, the glint of gold matching the smug certainty in his eyes. Every word of that contract, those buried clauses condemning thousands of migrant workers, was about to become law. Layla's breath caught. If she stayed silent, her mother's world would collapse under a weight no one else would notice. Her legs moved before her mind could catch up. She pushed past the guard's outstretched arm, the scrape of his badge against her shoulder sharp and cold. Gasps rippled across the room as she burst into the center, the sound of her sneakers against marble echoing like gunfire. Stop. The single word tore from her throat, raw and trembling. The cameras pivoted, lenses locking onto the small, defiant figure standing between the billionaires and their fortune. An executive barked for security. A guard grabbed her arm, but she twisted free, adrenaline flooding her veins. In halting Arabic and urgent English, she shouted the words she'd overheard. The secret clauses, the temporary displacement, the Arabic trap meant to erase families like hers. For a heartbeat, the world froze. The negotiator's smile faltered, the investors' faces flickered with confusion and doubt. Whispers ignited like dry brush in wind. Then came the roar. Protests from the foreign delegates, flashes from relentless cameras, a rising storm that could not be silenced. Layla's chest heaved, her voice shaking but unbroken as she named the injustice in front of millions. Her mother's eyes met hers across the chaos, wide with shock and something deeper, pride. And in that instant, before anyone could drag her away, Layla knew she had changed the room. Whether the deal lived or died, the truth was no longer hidden. Silence fell heavier than the marble floors as the chaos ebbed. Cameras kept rolling, capturing every flicker of doubt on the investors' faces. The golden pen lowered, its tip never touching the page. Lawyers scrambled through the contract, translating every buried line, while murmurs turned into accusations. Within an hour, the signing was called off. Postponed for further review, they said, but everyone in the room knew the deal was broken. Security escorted Layla and her mother outside, their hands shaking but heads high. For the first time, the crowd didn't look through them. Reporters rushed forward, microphones flashing like 1,000 tiny spotlights. They wanted to know how a teenage girl had uncovered a $500 million lie. Layla only said that her family had lived with quiet prejudice for years, and she refused to let it hide in fine print any longer. In the days that followed, headlines spread across continents. Officials launched investigations into exploitative labor practices. Workers who had never been given a voice finally found one, their stories echoing beyond the walls of that hotel. The contract's collapse cost powerful men millions, but it also forced a reckoning that money couldn't buy back. For Layla and her mother, life did not become magically easy. They still faced the same challenges of migrants everywhere, long hours, wary glances, and a system slow to change. Yet something irreversible had shifted. They were no longer invisible, and neither were the people who shared their struggle. Racism often hides in boardrooms and documents, not just in shouted slurs. It thrives when the world looks away. How many silent deals are still being signed while no one is watching? If a single teenager can drag injustice into the light, what could all of us do if we refuse to stay silent?